My entire adult life, I've worked in the fishing industry. One thing I've always done a lot of is R&D and testing for manufacturers. And that's what I'm doing today. And I'm doing kind of the final touches on the Rift series of saltwater rods for St. Croix. This is not a casual rod company, okay? This is not a company that is interested at all in building mass-produced rods that they're gonna stuff on the shelves of your local big box store. This is a handcrafted product. A ton of steps go into that process of engineering at the factory. But that's not what I'm involved in, okay? What I'm involved in is the process of testing them here in the real world environment. When we get a rod to start with, you can see there's no fancy labels on it. There's just a letter, a series of letters and numbers on it that tells me the length, the power, the action of the rod, and from there, guys like me go to town. For instance, this butt cap is designed specifically so that it doesn't mar your boat, so that it doesn't hang on your clothes when you're going back and forth with your reel like this. These can only be tested in a real world environment. Okay, you can do this all you want in your office, but that's a whole different thing than when I'm out here doing it with a red snapper hooked on the end of this rod and it's pulling me all over who knows where. The intention was to build a rod that would hold up to the rigors of fishing for really big, mean, hard-fighting saltwater fish. It's easy for a rod company to maybe build a rod and then test all the bends and all the flexes, and they got all these fancy machines that bend them all these different directions. That has nothing to do with the way, a giant snook pulls, or trying to pull a grouper up off the bottom, or the demands that are in place on a rod when you hook something like a big shark. The handle. Is this handle gonna hold up in the saltwater environment? What's it gonna be like when I take this rod out and I put it in and out of the back of my truck and it's getting loaded and unloaded, loaded and unloaded? Is it gonna hold up to that? We have a double lockdown feature on the grips, on the way that the reels seat. There's a reason for that, so that when you lock your reel down, if you have a gigantic fish that's twisting your reel back and forth in your hands, it doesn't develop a weak point. Do you wanna go out and be bottom fishing with your new favorite, very expensive fishing rod, and then all of a sudden hook a big shark that pulls you down to the gunnel and breaks your rod in half? I don't. For instance, I bait fish with this a lot. How does it work bait fishing? Because, if I get scales on it, do they stick to the blank? What's the resin like? That can only be tested in the sun and out here in the field. And the saltwater environment in general puts so much demand on your product that until that product is in the hands of field testers, there's really no way to find out if it'll hold up. Will the finish, will the guides and the wraps, will they hold up to UV? Okay, when I take this rod and I put it up in the top of my boat, and for instance, I go to the Keys and it sits in the top of my boat in a rod holder for 7 days in the Florida sun, is this gonna hold up? How do we know until it's tested? It's something that's intended for very, very serious anglers like myself, people that wake up thinking about fishing and go to bed thinking about fishing. And I can tell you that after working for years with St. Croix on rods just like this one, those are the same people that are in the process of running that business. There's a whole computer program that comes to me in an email. All the questions and all the subset of questions that the engineers have. How does the rod bend? What do you think of the butt? Do you like the way that the reel cranks onto the rod? I've had times that I've said no. Okay, and that's really important to St. Croix. That goes back and there's a redevelopment. Okay, so in this situation, with equipment like this, it's coming to people like me in the field. I'm communicating with the engineers. They're building a product that's 90% there before I even see it. But that final 10%, that part that you really, really need to work, that's what I'm doing. Building a product that they want you to use for a lifetime and then give to someone else to use for their lifetime. There's so much that goes into the building of this equipment, but only so much can be done in the warehouse or in the engineering facility. And people like me that are obsessed with fishing are working with their engineers who are obsessed with building fishing rods to provide you with a piece of equipment that you know every day on the water will live up to whatever it is that you throw at it. So in the meantime, I'm gonna put the final touches on this one and make sure there's nothing else to change. And you're gonna see this year the Rift series and know that this thing has been through the ringer.